Hey, I think we can start. We've got a pretty good crowd here. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Change Hawaii Faculty Showcase. Originally, this was going to be the student practice for their posters, but then we thought maybe it would be good for the students and also the broader community to get a sense for what the Change Hawaii project has been doing in the period of a year and a half now that we've been progressing. And also, actually, it's helpful to us. So sometimes our project is so big and there's so many people, we almost lose track of all the exciting stuff that's going on within our own project. We have folks from Hilo who will also be joining in, and also Montana, whom I'll introduce you in a moment, also participating in the presentation for today. And any moment in time, feel free to refill your coffee. The Coke and Diet Cokes are in the fridge over there. There's munchies over there. We have so many munchies, so please eat. I think we're only going to present for about an hour. And then after that, there'll be time to have more refreshments. And there's some live demonstrations that we set up. I think some of you like noticed, hey, what's this really shiny gadget that's going on there? I saw someone taking pictures. That's great. We'll give you a live demo over there afterwards. Okay, sounds good? All right. There you go. Computer people can't operate computers. All right, so in a nutshell, the vision of this project is to really build research capacity for UH, provide the training to future workforce so that we can build a more resilient economy and community to climate change, right? And regardless of whether you believe in climate change or not, I don't want to impose any politics in this, but I think we all have to acknowledge that in the past at least year and a half, we've seen some really terrifying climate events, right? Storms, in foreign countries, we've seen flooding, we've seen fires in Canada. I've spent 22 years of my life in Chicago, and I was shocked that there's this incredible smoke coming in from Canada to Chicago where people are having a hard time even breathing the air there. And of course, Lahaina, we've had our fire. So that part of the extreme disaster stuff we can't deny, regardless of whether we believe in climate change. So how do we become more resilient in that future potentially? And also because that kind of future is going to be much more expensive over time, because our insurance rates are probably going to increase, right? The cost of things to replace are going to increase. Lahaina is going to cost at least multiple of billions of dollars just to recover from. Imagine if those billions of dollars could be spent in other ways to have prevented it, and so forth, right? So that's as far as I'm going to go with the politics and soapbox speech. So how are we going to achieve this vision? This is the Change Hawaii strategy, and that is we try to bring together the best researchers that we have available to us in climate sciences, in data science, computer science, social science, and indigenous knowledge, cram them all together, mix them all together in a giant bowl, do some cutting edge research and some leading edge training in climate science, data science, diversity, equity, inclusion, partner with local industries and state and government organizations to work on these related climate change issues. So that's our simple strategy. That's our theory for success. And so what we're going to do today is touch on each one of those areas, introducing the team. Sorry, Michelle? Oh, introduce the team that's responsible for this, give you a bit of the research highlights, the education highlights, also the emerging areas and seed funding opportunities. And lastly, we're going to talk about the broadening participation initiatives. Okay. So quickly, what I'm going to do is very quickly go through the introduction of the team members. And what I'd like to do is for those who are going to be presenting the slides, introduce yourself in more detail as well as your sub-team. So that way we can connect the person with the person giving the slide better than me just talking and then you forgetting who they were. Okay. So myself, I'm the PI. Now I have to acknowledge that all this would not have been possible if it weren't for the leadership of Gwen Jacobs, who started this project and got us together to write that $20 million grant proposal. She is now happily retired and having fun in Portland, Oregon. And so I'm the new PI taking over. Philip Johnson's lead for the educational program. Tom Jambaluka is our climate science lead. I'm also the data science lead. Helen Turner is our broadening participation lead. These kinds of events take a lot of orchestration and planning, and also the writing of the monumental reports that we have to give to NSF take a lot of work, and that would not be possible without our amazing staff here. Michelle Cho, wave everybody, Maria Umalong, and also Shivani Tanaka, who's also leading the student fellowship programs in this project. In the climate science group, so you can see we're very heavily climate science focused, and that's why we have so many people. We have folks from UH Manoa, we have folks from UH Hilo, Chaminade University, East-West Center, Roy's East-West Center. We have folks at Maui as well, and Kenneth Kaufman, who is a new participant in this project, is our social scientist for this project. In the data science area, we have a pretty strong and growing set of data scientists. This particular project is hiring additional researchers and data scientists. We have an AI machine learning position still open and we're reviewing. So if you know anybody out there who wants to come to Hawaii, oh, terrible, coming to Hawaii, we're looking for a good AI machine learning person. We've hired a software engineer and a data viz person, and we'll introduce you to those folks in a moment. But for the data science, similarly, we have data scientists here in Manoa, as well as in Hilo. And of course, all this stuff has to sit on cyber infrastructure to make the computing stuff work. Climate science is large-scale data, large-scale computing to process the data, use of large-scale computing for artificial intelligence. And this is primarily directed by Sean Cleveland, right there in Montana, and also Jennifer Geis and Jared McLean. Jared actually lives in Hilo, Hilo student, now full-time staff working in cyber infrastructure at UH. For education, workforce, and emerging areas, we have Alex Stokes and Ryan Chong. Steve Albach is from our Indigenous Innovations Office. Kamala Enos and Rosie Allegado are part of the team working on Indigenous knowledge and innovation. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that later on as well. And lastly, and not least by any means, we'd like to introduce you to our two newest members to our team. Nurit Kirschenbaum, who's in visualization, our new hires in visualization, and Mehdi Mirakori back there. He's already acclimated to the Hawaii way of dressing. You can see how important this meeting is. I'm wearing long pants. I know most of you have never seen me wear long pants in my life. And his expertise is in software engineering, especially cybersecurity for software engineering, which is becoming more and more important these days. All right, so the research. So let's dive right into the cool, fun research. Theme one is about monitoring, visualizing, and communicating change. We'll get into more detail in a moment. Theme two is about simulating change, which is basically using high-performance computing and artificial intelligence to do climate simulation models. Theme three is about essentially water, which is incredibly important, obviously, to Hawaii. And Tom Jambaluka has been working in this area for a long, long time. And this is We're also in a drought period right now in Hawaii, which is a big issue for us. And of course, in the United States in general, we've heard more and more problems about water. When I was a younger researcher, a program manager, an old program manager came up to me and said, "Jason, pay attention, water." And that was 20 years ago. And she was in all these meetings already knowing that America was going to be in complete shit with regards to water. So this is a really important topic. And listen to old program managers. And then lastly, theme 4 is about land use change, right? How can we take all this information and more intelligently use our land, which is very limited in Hawaii? Okay. All right, so to set us off on the first theme, Tom Jambuka, come on up.
Thank you. Did you really go without long pants in 22 years in Chicago?
10 years in Hawaii.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So yeah, the Hawaii Climate Data Portal is something we've been working on and aspiring to produce for a very long time, especially Ryan Longman, who's on the list here, and I have been talking about doing this, and now we have had the opportunity to get it started. So what the portal is a place where you can find all the climate data for Hawaii, and that is something that's never been possible in the past. It's always been very difficult to gather station data from very many different sources, to quality control it and to get it into the same units, find out where the stations are located, all kinds of busy work like that. And so we wanted to put together a system that would bring it all together and continue to update that data real time. And so we've been able to do that, at least to a point where we've been able to launch the Hawaii Climate Data Portal with the help of Sean and his team on the cyber infrastructure side. It was launched about 1.5 years ago, and it provides data to openly to all users in the form of the station data, as I mentioned, but also in the form of spatial products, gridded maps of different variables that we're interested in, such as rainfall, precipitation, temperature, humidity, wind speed, solar radiation. Those are all things we want to put onto the portal in the form of digital maps. High resolution, high spatial resolution digital maps. So we started off with monthly rainfall. We have a system that automatically updates the data set, does quality control, interpolates it, and puts the map out. So every month, right at the end of the month, a new map comes out and appears on the portal. Now we're moving that to the daily interval and eventually to sub-daily interval and trying to automate all of that. Now, as part of that work, we also have initiated a project called the Hawaii Mesonet, which is building our own network of high quality weather and climate observing stations. This will be a network of around 100 stations statewide, all reporting data at a 5-minute interval and sending it every 15 minutes. So it's up to date, very up to date. Every 15 minutes, we get a batch of data from all the stations. We're currently building that network out, and we're up to about 40 stations as of this week. So we're well on our way. A year from now, we expect to have all or most of the 100 stations in place and online. So I do want to acknowledge, in addition to Ryan Longman, Maddie Lucas back there, Maddie. So that's one of our 3 Maddies. We'll call him Matt from now on, okay? And Carrie Kodama, there. Sean Cleveland, right here. You can wave, Sean. Thank you. And Jared McLean. I don't know if Jared is here anywhere, virtually or in person. I don't see him. Jennifer Geis, I don't know if she's here. She is there. There you are. Hi, Jennifer. And Jeff Wong. Okay, so go to the next slide. Okay, so this is how we're doing so far. We have different types of data sets. So in the first box there, we have 103 years of monthly rainfall maps. This is like the first thing we started trying to do. So we've done that all the way back to 1920. So that's more than 1,226 maps at this point. We have 33 years of monthly and daily rainfall station data and temperature data. 33 or greater than 33 years of monthly daily temperature minimum, maximum, and mean. And that comes out to more than 35,000 maps, all at very high spatial resolution, 250 meters resolution. And 21 years of vegetation maps. These are from satellite images interpreted using NDVI and with spatial and temporal gap filling to make them complete. And that's more than 540 maps at this point. This is what the data access page looks like here. Oh, I forgot down here. We also are including future projections from downscaled climate projections for mid and late century for different emission scenarios. So far, we've had more than 41,000 visitors from more than 130 countries, more than 1.1 million API requests, which is pretty amazing. More than 1.75 million downloads, 16.6 million files have been accessed, and over 260 gigabytes of data downloaded from the portal. So it is something that people find useful, apparently, lots of people, and they're able to get lots of information. So who is getting it? They're federal agencies like NOAA and USDA, state and county agencies, utilities such as HECO, and private industry and consulting, and private citizens as well. So I'm going to let Maddie do this update if you can. I think this is your list, so.
Yeah.
Why don't you come on.
Okay, so yeah, progress of where we are with the HCDP. We're currently updating all the containerization of all of our different processes. And so what that actually means is when we develop a process to make a variable, usually like a spatial variable. So that'd be daily rainfall, daily temperature, monthly rainfall, and so on. We build that out from data acquisition to interpolation or modeling over space, and then that process needs to be put into an environment that everything is kind of locked. So we're going to be using we're not using Kubernetes, we're using Docker, and everything goes into a Docker container that hopefully just freezes all of the versioning, and then that container that can then be deployed on any virtual machine. And we have a virtual machine set up through NSF Jetstream that get those going on certain tasks. So we're kind of working on containerizing some updated workflows and then adding some new ones. And we're actually expanding the capacity of the containerization to include more of our team members. So it's not, the burden's just not all on Sean's team. We're developing a queryable database for the HCDP, but also for the Hawaiʻi Mesonet, which I think is the next one. Oh no, yes, in the Hawaiʻi Mesonet. That's actually, this past couple weeks, there's been 7 or 8 independent requests from people I have no idea who they are that want that access. I think it's because the data is trickling through Synoptic right now. They have a really great API. That's the provider that pays us for our station data from the Hawaiʻi Mesonet. And I think that people are hooked on that data and then they get cut off because it's a $40,000 a year subscription to be able to access not just our data, but like nationwide data. And so Synoptic is actually telling us, you guys should make something free to these Hawaiʻi providers because there's a lot of demand.
And which we are doing.
That was already planned to do. It's just the demand is outpacing the supply right now, I guess you could say. So we're doing that. We've development of preliminary relative humidity maps. It's something Carrie's been working on, and it seems like it's almost there. We're reproducing the 2019 to current maps, and that's just because there's been a couple of little errors we found along the way. Sometimes stations get moved or relocated based off of user input, which has been a really great feedback from the HCDP. We've had 4 or 5 times where people said, I think the station is here, not here. And we're like, that's great. So we've fixed those kinds of things. And then there's a slight improvement on some of the processes. So we're just going to rerun the whole thing. And then we're developing the daily rainfall maps. So right now we're developing daily rainfall maps, and we're using a variable. I'm actually presenting on this at AGU, but it's basically a climate-aided interpolation that has a variability to it. So it doesn't just marry you to the actual climate template. It allows you to kind of dial that in an optimized way based off the error that we see. So that's going to be rolling out shortly. We are also finalizing the automation of the monthly temperature maps, working to ingest new products like the relative humidity, NDVI, and fire risk data, which is a project we're collaborating on with Syed Batani, and continuing the development of future features on the HCDP. So that would be like a digital, be able to click and be able to get virtual weather station, I think we're calling that. So you'd be able to click anywhere on the map and be able to get all of the different layers that are out there. So that's kind of a really cool thing that we've wanted to do for a couple years, and now we're doing it. Publication, we have an accepted article with minor revisions that was carried with the daily temperature maps. That was just accepted yesterday. Yesterday?
Just today, they sent the final.
Today, final acceptance. And publication, we submitted a publication for the entire HCDP project that Ryan has done, and I don't know where that actually is. I think it's yeah, but you know,
I see. No, it's just in.
just submitted.
Sorry, just
Yeah,
submitted, yeah.
submitted, which is a great one because that'll actually give a good citation for everyone using the data.
Nice.
Yes, of course.
Great. See what's next. Okay, so I'll turn this back over to Jason. This is Stage Suite, yeah. Okay, thanks.
So there are several components to this other segment of the project, which is Sage Suite. The overall goal is to basically build visualization capabilities for this project. My area is in immersive analytics. So we're looking at developing techniques for AI-enhanced immersive analytics. Nuri Kirschenbaum will talk a little bit about her work in data physicalization. And then as far as the notion of Sage itself, Sage is basically software for driving large display walls. It kind of looks like that. And people are able to work in front of large display walls and on laptops as if they were one completely seamless environment. And what's great about having these large-scale environments is that careful study of people working in front of them have shown that people are actually able to be more productive, almost 2.5 times faster than just normally working the way they normally do on their regular computers and laptops. But you can sort of see that large format really allows you to juxtapose a large amount of information simultaneously. Now, one of the prior challenges to doing this for normal people, for humans who are not computer scientists, is that if you're taking data from various sources and you want to build these elaborate dashboards, you have to be a coder, right? And then what's cool about what we're doing here now is that you don't have to be a coder anymore. Anywhere on the web where you find a useful data portal where they have some kind of visualization, you can bring it in to the Sage environment and they're all live. I'm not a climate scientist. The closest for me as a climate scientist is I surf. And so I brought in telemetry charts from various surf locations and built my own little dashboard. And in 5 minutes. So I'm going to give you a quick demo of this so you can sort of see what it looks like. It might have audio, but if it doesn't come through, I'll just talk through it. So this little demo I'm going to show you, we're going to demonstrate in the NASA booth at AGU next week, literally. So the two students who work on this, one is in the climate group and one is in computer science. RJ, Roderick the Bulb is in computer science, and Cheryl is in climate sciences. They won this year's AGU visualization competition for this work. So here's an example of what it's like to build your own dashboard without coding. So this is pulling Tom's Mesonet data. So you bring up a little map. And those are some of the data points where Tom has sensors. Going deeper into the map, you can see where all the little sensors are in greater detail. You can choose sensors to add to your aquarium map. And then you can spawn off a little chart of a particular data parameter. So here, RJ's made a little line chart. And then he can change the parameters or any other attribute that Tom has in his database to update the chart. And then he could simply, if he wanted to, clone this chart and then tweak the parameter to build another chart. And then just keep going. There it is, fast forward in time. And so in literally 5 minutes, he's built this dashboard without coding. And then on top of that, maybe he likes to go to some other website like windy.com to grab their visuals, right? Their live chart. So he might bring up a web viewer, and in it he types windy.com, and there it is. So now this is live next to everything else. So any other data source you might have out there, even if it's like an ArcGIS supported site, you can bring into this kind of environment. And this secretively saves us a lot of time because we're not a large enough computer crew to write code for every constituent out there. Okay, moving on. Nurit is going to talk about data visualization.
Hi. So kind of the idea behind the data visualization is that we want to help make data more accessible and more engaging for wider audiences. And in data visualization, we basically give a more tangible, more physical, three-dimensional kind of representation that people can engage with. And we see that people are very attracted to it. So what we have here, what we've worked on, and this is actually Tracy's work, and Tracy is right up there, so it's interested. Also, Karinona worked on it, but she's not here right now. Is this a table that has a projector on top and a 3D model on the table, and it's right over there. So after this, please come and look at it. And if you've been in Lava before, you probably say, well, we've seen this before. Why is this any different from the previous versions? So we are actually trying to standardize all of the things that we are doing in this physicalization system, the hardware that we want to use, the software. We want to make it so we can very quickly distribute the knowledge of how to build up that system to other places that they can make their own systems, and using just images that they create through ArcGIS or something like that, add their own maps and their own data to these tables instead of just exactly like with the states. Instead of going through us and asking us to build it for them, we want them to be able to build it themselves. So this is that project of trying to make it more generalizable and make it easy for everybody to work on their own. So I forgot that there's a video. Sorry. So this is just an example of the system for especially people online who cannot see it during the break. This is the 3D model, and this is the touch screen, which has the nice user interface that Chris designed, and you can turn on and off the various data layer. And this is a collection of data that we have from the State of Energy Department. We recently added the wildfire data for I don't remember the set of years. 1999, 1920. So we added that later. So please come and look at it, and yeah, that's it. Oh.
Okay, so yeah, next up, Maddie Belke. Oh, there he is. Then you can pass the torch to Super. Oh, okay, fine. So as Jason mentioned earlier on, the objective of our team was to build tools and infrastructure to help disseminate and distill information.
So essentially, all the work that Change Hawaii is doing, how can we communicate it in an efficient way to both experts and non-experts in the field? And eagerly starting the project, like, okay, yeah, let's build the next algorithm to do this. And just to realize that everything's in PDFs, and PDFs are locked, and you can't get any information from PDFs. So there are a lot of solutions that you could do. You could pay thousands of dollars to get access to private databases, or you can maybe pay Acrobat and still get results that are not usable. And so what we decided to do is to build our own infrastructure. And what we did here, I'll give you an example, is leveraging vision models to essentially zoom in onto pages and find text blocks. So these are the same models that are typically used to find fish or trees or leaves in the wild, except that we're using them in the wild world of PDFs to find text blocks. So what we do after is we label these blocks using semantically relevant information, such as, for example, equations or headers or tables or images. And then we extract the information using readily available tools and infrastructure from these PDFs. So we can, for example, take this table here, and this is a paper that Ryan and the team actually published on sensor data. And so we can extract this table and get it in actual markdown or LaTeX format or text format, and we can use it to actually convey the information that I want to convey to the users. And so once we run these models, we end up with a very well-structured JSON document that describes all aspects of what a PDF contains, from names of the authors to references, citations, and so on and so forth. And then we take that information, and our first contribution was a prototype of a system that we call the retrieval-assisted generation. So essentially, it's a way to make an AI respond or provide responses that are grounded in text that exists in your database. So we take those JSON objects, essentially, we format them, we put them in databases, specific databases that an AI can understand. Those are vector databases. And a user, as the example here shows, can then ask a question. For example, what is the QM method? And the text based on text that is, the system based on text that exists in the database can provide a true, actual definition of what the QM method is. So given that we actually extract equations and tables and pretty much everything in the JSON object, we can go further and we can ask questions that are contained in a table. Say, for example, show me the method, show me the median, MED, and their RMSE for the QM method for 1 day gap. And it knows that the information is held in this data here, and it tells me that the line here is 2.3 and 1.8. So these are the medians from the tables. Something that pretty much everyone struggles with is just who are the authors of the paper. And given that this is an actual field in the JSON object, we could say who wrote the paper, characterizing the uncertainty and assessing the value of blah, blah, blah. And it says the paper was written by Ryan Longman, Andrew Newman, Tom Gianluca, and Matthew Lucas. So it knows who the authors of the paper are. So step one, checked. We know how to some extent, disseminate information. But how do you distill information? How do you take hundreds or dozens of papers and you synthesize them in a manner that fits the expertise and understanding of the user? So that's slightly a longer term project, but we think we've identified a very good framework to tackle the problem. So essentially, given a bunch of documents, how can you synthesize the documents in a brief summary? How can you generate a literature review? If you're wondering whether ChatGPT can do this, it can generate a summary, but not a good summary, not something that you would want to rely on for a few reasons. Well, first of all, ChatGPT is context limited, so you can't give it multiple documents. It has the context to fit, at most a few hundred or a few thousand characters or words, actually. These models hallucinate. They invent information that does not exist in your document. You cannot ensure that important concepts are included in the summaries. There's no way to make sure that this concept is super important, relevant to in my documents, and therefore should be in the summary. There's no way to structure that narrative. There's no way to introduce topic 1 first, topic 2 2. There's no way to have control over the overall narrative. So to answer these questions, we came up with a tree, a semantic tree data structure. A little faint, it doesn't show, but it looks like a phylogenetic tree. where essentially the leaves are sentences in the documents. And the tree essentially represents the semantic similarity or the topical similarity of the sentences across documents. And so the idea here is that we're going to take that tree, and I'm representing a cartoon simplistic version of that tree on the right, and showing some edges using thicker lines. And those thicker lines essentially represent the saliency, the importance of a concept. So if we're able to take that tree on the left and turn it into a tree on the right, where we have the saliency or the importance of every single edge, then we can frame this as an optimization problem. Essentially what we're looking for, this is not a context-limited issue. We can build trees as big as we want them. We have memory to fit thousands, if not millions of documents very easily. The problem of preventing hallucination, we make sure that any sentence has to come from this tree and absolutely only from this tree, prevents hallucination. Ensuring inclusion of key concepts. The question becomes, how can we select the minimum number of branches, the thickness of which is represented in different lines here, and make sure that these branches are present in the final documents in such a way that minimizes the total numbers of branches that we select, but also minimizes the distance between the branches. For example, if I take one, I'm not going to take two. They're close, semantically relevant to each other, so one of them is enough. But also, if you want to control the narrative, I'm not going to talk about point number 1, then jump to point number 8, then go back to point number 5, because the distance, the semantic distance along that tree is very big. So I'm going to talk about concepts 1 and 5, then maybe 8, then maybe 13. So these are all constraints that we can impose and solve fairly easy. So progress, we're working on implementing that document parsing, the PDF parsing in Jetstream, which is a cloud resource. Make it available for a lot of people. I know that Becky and other people who are interested in extracting information from PDFs may find that useful for snowballing when you're doing literature reviews or for doing fair adherence to fair for your data sets. It should be available soon. And also, we're implementing a way to use natural language processing methods. The same models are used behind ChatGPT, namely transformers, to predict the saliency, to predict the thickness of those branches. So once we have that, we'll just proceed with the optimization as a first sort of solution to test this hypothesis. So this is where we are at, and I'm gonna hand it over to the next person, who's Tom again.
Or I'll take that, Marty. Thanks. So this is the beginning of theme 2. Theme 1 is all about collecting data and visualizing it and extracting useful information. Theme 2 is about using machine learning and artificial intelligence and combining that with climate models to predict what's going to happen to the climate of Hawaii. So the goal of this project here is to predict future rainfall in 10 to 50 years from now. We know that the current models do not give very good predictions for Hawaii. And the reason is that the current method of predicting future climate is based on these big simulations, which have very coarse-grained simulations that don't capture the particular properties of Hawaii and all the microclimates we have here. So the goal of this project is to build statistical models, take in the coarse resolution climate simulations, and predict high resolution predictions of the rainfall in different regions of Hawaii. So we train these statistical models on historical data using ERA 5 reanalysis data, and then predicting the output of these models is the real observations taken from Tom's team over the last 50 years. We're predicting monthly averages because that's the climate variable of interest. We want to know how much water is going into the water table. And we're comparing a bunch of different statistical methods, including linear regression, neural networks, other simple machine learning tools, but we're also exploring more complicated deep learning techniques. So we're almost ready to publish a paper on this, and we're going to publish the future forecasts of rainfall in the Hawaii Climate Data Portal. That's one of the deliverables of this project. Next slide.
Peter, click.
Thanks. So ideas that we had while working on this project was to use a new deep learning model called a diffusion model to do the statistical downscaling. And this is a model that's become popular in the image generation techniques such as Midjourney or DALL-E 3, which is now available to play with through Bing. Basically, all the new image generating models use these techniques. And we published a quick archive paper earlier this year showing how to do this for weather prediction. And we plan on doing it for climate stuff as well. But weather was easier because we had the data ready to go. Basically, the idea is we have some weather forecasts that are based on a climate simulation published by the government. And we can train a diffusion model that takes in those coarse resolution atmospheric variables like cloud cover, temperature, wind speed, and apply a super resolution technique to generate high resolution images of cloud cover or any other variable that we have high resolution data for. So here, this is the resolution of the weather satellites. These are 500-meter resolution images produced every 10 minutes by the GOES weather satellite. So we have very nice data that we can use to train these models, about 100,000 images in our historical data set from the last couple of years. And that's enough to train one of these big deep learning models. So we're using this new generative AI technique to do statistical downscaling. We put out this paper earlier this year, which has gotten a lot of attention, actually. I've given talks on this method to Argonne National Lab in the last month, as well as EPSCoR at in Colorado. And I won a NSF Career Award, which is basically proposing to develop this idea further. And yeah, that's about it for this project. Next slide. Yeah, is Allison here?
Allison had to
Okay,
leave.
I'll summarize
So-
this unless Allison is here to step in. So sorry.
Are you gonna go ahead, Peter? You can go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I'll go ahead. Yeah. So this project is to use the numerical simulations at very high resolution to study the effects of climate change on the microclimates of Hawaii. And so this is more traditional climate science, machine learning. The statistical models don't play as big a part, but these are very high resolution, computationally intensive simulations that are being run by Giuseppe Torri and Allison Nugent. And the data science people, Jason and I, are providing support for this. I don't know if you had anything to add.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I'll just add that the idea here is to use a model that you can tune up to reproduce, let's say, an historical event, an extreme event, for example, and then tweak the environment to see how that event would play out under future conditions, such as future warmer atmosphere and warmer sea surface temperature, for example. Obviously, we're interested in that. And also things like changing land cover. So removing vegetation, urbanizing an area, or what have you, and seeing how that would affect those mesoscale meteorological processes and change the event, make the flood worse, perhaps. So, for example, we could look at the April 2018 flood event that devastated northern district of Hawaiʻi and see, well, how would that play out, 50 years from now with a warmer climate? So this is very, very exciting work. I should also mention that they've recently hired a graduate student in atmospheric science, Emma Layton, who's here. Emma, right? And they also have hired a postdoc who is, I guess, not quite here yet, but is working from abroad. So I'll just move on. Okay, so all right, so this is a new section of the project, which is a different section, I should say, which is to look at cloud water interception. And cloud water interception is the water that is caught when a cloud blows through vegetated areas. So in the mountains in Hawaii, we have a cloud zone, and that those clouds are being driven by wind, and they blow through the vegetation. And so these droplets, clouds are, in Hawaii at least, all liquid droplets, and they impact on the leaves and the stems of the trees and other plants and collect there and drip down and add water to the watershed and to the ecosystem that is not measured in a rain gauge. So it is additional water, it is another type of precipitation, and it is really, really hard to measure, and it's very, very spatially and temporally variable. And so we've done a lot of measurements of it. It does take a big, expensive kind of field setup, and then you get data for a few years, and then you know something about one place for that period. So we would like to be able to use what we know and extend that across the landscape to know what the spatial distribution of cloud water interception is, because it's an essential part of our water balance and the hydrological cycle in Hawaii. So it is a complex process that's controlled by atmospheric variables such as the wind speed and the density of cloud droplets in the water, the liquid water content in the cloud. And so we need to be able to, make measurements and then incorporate our knowledge into models that can reproduce that. And so we are working with folks like Travis Mandel. Travis, are you on the call? You're there, I see you. Maybe you can say something about the human in the loop AI portion.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our work has been sort of extending our code base to be able to support, any type of model, whether that be what probably Peter's going to discuss on the next slide with a deep learning model or anything like that in terms of, gathering data on a certain area and then trying to help guide people to where to collect future data. So we're kind of extending the code base so that it can support an arbitrary model to integrate with the rest of the team.
Thank you. Okay, so progress today, we have, first of all, weather sensors are really important to be able to, understand this. So we have instrumented an 80-foot tower at Nahuku, which otherwise known as Thurston Lava Tube area within Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. And that includes all the essential measurements we need. Actually, we have one more thing we need to add to it, but it's measuring wind speed, it's measuring a lot of the other variables we need. And we also have added to that a SAGE node, which is a very advanced sensing system that includes onboard computing capability with GPUs that will enable us to use AI to process data at the site. So this is something called edge computing. Instead of bringing the data back and analyzing it later, it's analyzed real time right there at the field site. And that lets us do things we couldn't do otherwise, such as save very high temporal resolution data that would otherwise have to be thrown out as we collect more, and maybe redirect sensors to do different things. So these SAGE nodes are equipped with lots of cameras, one of which is a pan and zoom, so it can be pointed in different directions. And other instruments can be attached to it. And we are going to purchase a kind of expensive instrument that measures cloud droplets and tells us the liquid water content at a very high temporal resolution. Now, we can't buy a $100,000 cloud droplet instrument and a SAGE node. We can't buy enough of them to do this all over the state of Hawaii. So it would be good to be able to do this reasonably well with cheaper instruments. And one way to do this, we think, is to use digital images to analyze the cloud density. We hope we can certainly use it at least to tell whether it's fog or no fog condition. And so there's something on that in the next, one of the next slides. So we're going to add that sensor. We're also going to compare the results from that sensor to the digital images, and then hopefully develop models that can use digital images to as we go forward. So, okay, I'm going to move on. Yeah,
So
sorry.
as Tom was mentioned, one of the things we want to do is detect fog from these sensors. And it turns out that cameras, like trail cameras that you can buy off the shelf at sporting goods stores, have gotten really cheap, and they're actually much cheaper than specialized liquid water content devices. So this sub-project was to classify images as having fog or no fog from standard trail camera images. And this project was really championed by Joel Nicola, who's an REU student, undergraduate, working with my group and other groups doing this machine learning project. So Joel actually hand labeled about 24,000 images from 13 different stations here in Hawaii as being fog versus no fog. And he's experimented with a bunch of different machine learning methods to classify these images. And he has some very good results, about 95% accuracy, both daytime and nighttime. And he's written a paper and submitted it, and it looks pretty good. So the code is going to be released very soon on GitHub. Joel's already working with multiple groups who are interested in using this to actually collect data. And the data set itself of 24,000 images is going to be put up on COA Cloud soon. So anybody will be able to use that data set.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to go back just for a moment to talk about the team. And a very important member of the team is Han Tseng, who's not here today because she's out in the field installing a station. So she's doing something very important. You've met Peter and Travis, and also introduced you to the SAGE node, which is, there's a photo of it here. So I talked about it, but I didn't tell you there's a photo. And this is Han on the 80-foot tower installing, this is a rain gauge. And this is the top of our 80-foot tower, including a bunch of gizmos that are all part of the SAGE node system. Okay. And let's move to impact.
Sure. Aloha. I'm Ying-Fen Jen. I'm a surface hydrologist. So for this project, oh, I don't know if everybody can see me. So for this project, is following the thread from Tom's. We'd like to know more about different part of the water in our water cycle. Specifically, this project is about soil moisture. It's describing the water content at the surface of the surface of the ground between the surface all the way to could be 1 meter deep. The reason to study the soil moisture at that level is because it's actually quite hard to understand that how, actually, let me start over. So soil moisture underground is actually a result of the rainfall, like how much water we receive, but also like how much of the soil, solar radiation and temperature that might have evapotranspired the water out of that surface. While we have now with Tom's group's effort have a really good understanding of how our rainfall data and the receiving is, but given we are in Hawaii, actually around the world, there's such a wide variety of soil types and the topography, the terrain, and all the weather conditions, along with geology, all affecting how much water being stored at the surface and how that process the water eventually going out of the watershed and the rest. So for this specific effort, what we're trying to do is to understand that how the soil moisture is very temporally, but also spatially, if that makes sense. And as you probably have learned from Tom's presentation, now we have a fantastic project Mesonet is going around the state, deploying 100 weather station, and all the 100 weather stations that of the Hawaii Mesonet is also including the soil moisture sensing in each of the stations. That is fascinating, but at the same time, the landscape is so varied, right? It's really hard to understand that in a given location, how varied and how can we eventually interpolate or extrapolate that given location information. So this project is where this is where we're trying to dive into. So what we propose to do is do a smaller but pilot study to understanding the soil moisture distribution within a watershed scale. And eventually with this understanding, we can extrapolate and based on the Mesonet data to hopefully help us understand the soil moisture statewide. I hope that I'm explaining the background and context of it. So let me introduce the team. So I'm Infenzen, I'm the surface hydrology, but we also are working with Travis Mendel. Hi, Travis. So one of the main critical point in this soil moisture network that we are planning to do is that because such high heterogeneity throughout the landscape, it's hard to decide where to put them, the soil moisture network. Right, so the map that is shown here is done by Yan Wei Pan, my student, that is the newly recruited student. He has been trying to understand that different landscape elevation, the terrain, a slope, and as well as different soil property and different soil depth to try to find an association with the stream location, trying to identify a good location for deploying the soil moisture network. So this is our preliminary design of the soil moisture network location. And specifically, we are about to go out and install in December 18 after the AGU. So happy AGU and combat field work. So hopefully we'll have more things to show in the next showcase. And right now, we do have a preliminary result from the one weather station, one part of the Mesonet, looking at the soil moisture data. And the student have been trying to compare and see that what is the good algorithm to describing the soil dynamic within the with the data that we already got. And Travis, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to the last one in the sense like that, as you mentioned, a big problem for soil moisture is determining where to install new sensors, and we have we're you know, extending our code base. We're pretty much done with that to the place where it can take in an arbitrary soil moisture model and help given some existing data determine, you know, some useful places to sample next. So we're making good progress on that.
Thank you, Travis. And the third one is Chris Schuler, and I don't see him on the list. Is Chris in the field today? Probably. Yeah. So Chris is based in Maui, and then was to mention that he's like playing a critical role in a lot of things going on in Maui as well. For example, the fire, post-fire. A lot of process that we are really rely on him. And then he's also, we are planning to do a peer co-location study for the soil moisture sensor installation. So hopefully we're gonna have some peer data to look at both Maui and also our network station here to see a co-location of the data analysis. Okay, so I think that's all. Thank you. Should I go to the next slide? Okay.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ryan Peroy from UH-Hilo. Hopefully you all can hear me all right. But I'm gonna talk a little bit on behalf of a team working on this, which includes Becky Ostertag from UH-Hilo and Christian Giardina, who's part of the U.S. Forest Service. And then Travis, and then Narit also has been helping us with a few different things. So this next theme, identifying carbon sequestration trade-offs. So we're very interested in, providing information to land managers and other folks to make decisions about land use for future land management. And part of this is thinking about, carbon sequestration trade-offs. And initial component of this is kind of understanding, where the carbon is now and what things may look like under these different scenarios. So we've got a number of different, goals associated with this project. And one of them, there's an example shown for species level classification that we're doing for the Pu'uwawa Aupua'a here on Hawaii Island, where instead of just saying we've got forests and grassland and shrubs and such, we're trying to, again, get down to species level using worldview imagery, supplemented by higher resolution drone and helicopter data, and then a lot of field data as well to generate these species level maps. And then trying to do that for Aupua'a here on Hawaii Island, then also the Manoa Aupua'a, and then eventually the goal is to spread it out to the rest of the state. And so it's a fairly ambitious mapping a goal we've undertaken here, but we're making good progress. Kanoa Lindiwe, an undergraduate here, has been working closely with us on this through the EPSCoR program, which I think is also part of this larger NSF grant. And once we get some of these data sets in hand, we've got a postdoc we've recruited, Josefa Percival, who's actually finishing up in Kyoto University. He'll be joining us in a month or so, and he's going to undertake a lot of the interactive visualizations and decision support tools that we will then be, showcasing for some of the different land managers that we are talking with. And as part of that, those relationship building, Christian, Becky, and I have been part of what we're calling kind of a carbon hui with a number of important land managers and departments in the state. So Kamehameha Schools, the Nature Conservancy, Department of Land and Natural Resources. We've got these, monthly or every other month meetings talking about different aspects of carbon. And we're planning what we're calling a carbon summit, which will be held in UH-Hilo in January of 2024, to talk about needs and priorities relating to carbon sequestration, carbon accounting, and these different future scenarios. So in addition to the mapping and sort of, thinking about some of these visualization tools, we're also really trying to work very closely with the different partners around the state and thinking about what the needs are and making sure we're trying to meet those. As part of making these different maps, there's a lot of groundwork that happens, and so we've been working with, educating our youth. A lot of UH-Hilo undergraduate students are participating in lots of fun field work around the island to help us gather some of the ground truth data for doing some of this work, making three-dimensional models, and again, these land cover classifications, which are going to be the heart for some of this. I think that's all I wanted to share. Becky's feeling a little under the weather. Otherwise, I'm sure she would chime in, but I think we can pass this off to Travis, who's got all kinds of things to share.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, so Ryan gave a good introduction to the carbon sequestration project. The work I do is kind of hard to figure out where to stick it in, because the same human in loop AI algorithms are going to apply to multiple different domains, and that's the whole vision of this, is that we want to make sure that we're doing work that helps multiple different kinds of climate science projects. So some of the goals for the human in the loop AI side of this EPSCoR project are to involve undergraduates in research surrounding human in the loop AI for climate science, extend human in the loop AI for scientific data collection. We have this existing code base that we published and was quite well received, but it had a lot of limitations. And for instance, only handling one-dimensional data, only handling discrete data, not handling any kind of external model. And so, building out that code base, takes some time. And then also, creating ways that people can annotate data that kind of makes the process more efficient, given the large amount of data that we might want to have annotated, and the relatively small amount of workforce that we have to do that. We want to make that as efficient as possible. And so initially we're kind of, taking as kind of our first test case, the carbon sequestration, land use type mapping project, but the work that we're doing should be able to help with especially the soil moisture and the cloud water interception projects, which have a lot in common in the sense that they either need maps of things, or they need they need to determine where to collect new data, which are the two key problems. So progress, we've recruited a large number of undergraduates. Here at UH Hilo, we don't have PhD students like at Manoa, but we do have undergraduates who are able to, work part-time through the school year, as well as through summer research experience. So we had our first 8-week summer research experience, and there were 4 students who were working on parts of this project, and that really pushed it forward quite a bit, which was exciting to see. There's some pictures of us there in the upper right. The other thing that's exciting is, there's actually a high school student working on this project right now, and we had to go through this new University of Hawaii minors on campus policy, and I was the first person outside of athletics to do that since the policy was enacted. So it's like the first time that there's been a high school student, working in person, at least on research tasks. So that's really exciting. So those are more broader impacts in terms of intellectual merit. We extended a code base to, have now multidimensional continuous environments are able to be incorporated. You're able to incorporate arbitrary models that help, whether that's, some deep learning, or even, things that Peter was talking about, very exciting, like diffusion models and so on. Anything should be able to be incorporated into our system. One of the problems that was mentioned in some of the past projects that we run into too is, figuring out, again, like what are some ways that we can, interpolate data. And there's, obviously a lot of methods out there. We tried a few. For us, it's really important to have some sense of probability or uncertainty, as well as the interpolation. So we tried a few, some that are based on deep learning neural networks, and some that are more classic, but there's more that we're trying right now. And we're open to collaboration with other people on those methods. And then we also have we need the system that can have people annotate in different styles, and that it really doesn't exist out there in something that will automatically change for you the style of annotation to better suit the particular problem, the particular personality of the annotator. There's lots that let you just choose which one you want, but not something that actually like adapts that to your personality. And a lot of the most popular systems, they're kind of closed, like Labelbox, RoboFlow are some popular ones, but they're kind of closed. So we took this open source one, Label Studio, and we've now, we had to delve deep into the JavaScript and all this complicated code for it, but we were able to get it so that, we can have the system under the hood that's automatically adjusting how people, what style of annotation people use to annotate data. And so now we're starting to think about, okay, like what algorithms can we use to do that effectively, and so on and so forth. And we've even hooked that into some of the carbon sequestration models we developed with Christian and Ryan to be able to, score, okay, if you have this method of, annotating, and you have this method of annotating, what difference does that make in terms of things climate scientists actually care about, like net ecosystem production and these other really important metrics. So that's the progress we've made on the human in the loop side.
I think Becky is next, or?
Easy. Person up there. Hi, everybody. So I'll introduce our team first. My name is Casey Barton. I'm a professor here at UH Manoa. There's also Becky Ostertag, a professor at UH Hilo, Maddie Belcade, who you've already met. We also have recruited a postdoc, Mani-chan Santi-chan, back here in the corner. And we have two grad students. We have Kelly Elliott over at UH Hilo and Will Harrigan here at UH Manoa, as well as two undergraduate students. So I feel like a bit of an imposter because I would never introduce myself as a climate scientist, although I see I've been grouped that way. We're actually a team of biologists. And when thinking about climate change effects here in Hawaii and hoping for a stable and healthy future, that really depends on a healthy and stable natural environment and healthy and functional ecosystems. And the foundation of terrestrial ecosystems are plants. So we really need to understand how plants are going to be affected by climate change. And we need to be doing this with a mind towards the diversity of plants here in the islands. So we have a lot of diversity, and the way that plants cope with climate stress varies a lot, both among species, but also, of course, within species. So a lot of our species are widespread. They occur across steep climatic gradients. And associated with that are really strong differences resulting from local adaptation and how plants cope with stress, climate stress. So if we want to be thinking about how are plants going to respond to future climates, we need to have a mechanistic understanding for how they're interacting with climate stress today, so we can try to project how future climate is going to affect them. So that's our goal, a mechanistic understanding of plant-climate relationships. And that mechanistic understanding comes from looking at traits, specific traits, physiological traits, morphological, anatomical, whole organism traits. And as I said, these are really variable. So our goal is to create or compile and develop new databases that have all of this trait data for Hawaiian plants. And we're actually developing two different databases because the type of data are really different. So we have species level data, which are available in floras. So we're compiling that into a database that has a separate entry for each species. So that's really useful. We have good coverage for the whole flora. But at the species scale, it doesn't really allow us to look at that within species or spatial component associated with climatic heterogeneity. So we're also compiling trait data collected at individual sites across the islands. And those are published data. So this is a systematic review and extraction of published data that we then compile into the database. And each data line is then the measure of one trait for one species at one site. So you can imagine there's a lot of these publications. So it's a lot of work extracting these data. We're up to about 8,000 data lines right now, and we're just cruising. We've got a lot more to do. So I think this is going to be really promising. But the coverage is really different. We have biases in terms of sampling of certain species and certain islands. So the two databases are really different, but together I think are highly complementary. Our goal then is to analyze these data in conjunction with climate. So we're depending a lot on all these new climate data that we are having access to characterize the relationships between plant function and climate, accounting for all this heterogeneity within the islands. We can leverage those relationships to try to project into the future how new, different climate is going to affect plant function from a mechanistic perspective. That helps us try to make predictions about which plants are likely to do well in certain environments and which plants are likely to be declining. We can then leverage that to make recommendations for restoration and conservation, so we can be sure to target management for vulnerable species, but also rely on the more tolerant species for outplantings and restorative assembly sorts of projects. So that's our ultimate goal, is to take this from historical climate trait relationships to future climate trait relationships, with the goal towards conserving the plant diversity here in the islands. So that's where we are. We're in the middle of tons of data extraction. There will be lots of papers at the end, and two open access databases that I think will be a really great resource for the scientific communities, and restoration tools which we can share with land managers. All right, that's it.
Aloha, I'm Philip Johnson. I'm a professor in information and computer sciences, and Shivani Tanaka over there is also on our team, and Cam Moore, who I don't think is here right now, is also part of it. I've been an educator at the university level for over 30 years. Quite frankly, I'm very annoyed. There's three big barriers to access. Well, there's lots of barriers to access, but I want to point out three. One is temporal. Why do you have to commit yourself for an entire semester to learn anything at the university level? Secondly, why do you have to commit yourself to one specific discipline? Climate science, data science, these are very interdisciplinary, okay? But you generally have to enroll in a specific program with specific prereqs, put you in a particular kind of track, makes it difficult to access other areas and other people doing excellent work. Third barrier is institutional, right? You don't generally enroll in several different universities simultaneously. You got to pick one. Ridiculous. So I'm interested in this EPSCoR project at the workforce development level because we are subversive. Okay, we're trying to go a different path. We're building our own little educational, I don't want to say empire, because that's kind of the dark side of the force. The rebel forces, all right? And it has a graduate level, an undergraduate level. And what I want you to think about with respect to this is that we're trying to deal with all three of these barriers to access. We're trying to create educational opportunities that don't require a semester worth of commitment, don't require you to be in any one particular discipline in order to engage in the opportunities. And you'll see that you know how hard it is even to collaborate inside the UH system, right? But we're trying to go outside the UH system involved and create an educational hui, which involves other universities like Chaminade. Is HBU in there now? Not yet, but try to look at all the universities, at least in Hawaii, and create educational opportunities that don't require one particular affiliation. So the first one thing we've been doing is a series of workshops. This is part of the Data Science Fellows program. And instead of requiring a semester's worth of commitment or two classes a week over 14 weeks, we're trying to create very bite-sized chunks of educational opportunity, 2 hours on a Friday afternoon, using not La Lima, and trying to figure out how it is that you create high-quality workshop environments, which are short-term, which can take people from a variety of disciplines and give all of them something useful in a short period of time, where they can leave the workshop with a skill, okay, that they can apply. That turns out to be really hard. Okay, so we're in year 2, and we're starting to figure out what are the kind of pedagogical patterns that enable you to create a 2-hour workshop that's useful. So we're doing better on that front. It's still very hard from the assessment data to create a workshop where some people come in with a lot of background in the area, some people come in with very little background in the area, and figure out a way to satisfy both those needs. Okay, so in any given workshop, when we look at the assessment, it's a little, I want to say like bipolar, but that doesn't sound good. There's some people that are like, this was all very trivial to me. And then other people were like, wow, this went really fast. I couldn't keep up. And then there's another segment of people who were like, oh, this was perfect. Okay, so that's something that we'll be continuing to work on for the rest of this project, is figuring out how to kind of Goldilocks the workshop opportunity. We've also been using it to gather from students what the direction of the workshop content should be. So we had an initial set of workshops last year. We refined them this year based upon the content that the students want to see, and we'll be continuing to do that over time. Okay, Shivani's going to talk about the next program.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see the Data Science Fellows here today. The Data Science Fellows program is a year-long program that originated in the Hawaii Data Science Institute, and we're right now sitting in the classroom of the Hawaii Data Science Institute. The program is open to master's and PhD students. This year, the cohort is made up of 11 students, and 6 of whom are supported by the Change Hawaii project. I'm just going to go over very briefly what the departments are and what research focus they're in. But we do have the students research showcase scheduled for next spring, so stay tuned for that. We have Amila, who's working with Peter Sadowski, who's also in the Change Hawaii project. He's working on machine learning methods for rainfall prediction. We have Tracy Bowie, who's responsible for the projectable at the corner. She's working with Jason Lee. Ariane Gunnell is working with both Dr. Peter Sadowski and John Shepard on medical computer vision for breast cancer screening. Kelly Ellett from UH-Hilo is working with Becky Gossitag and PC Martin on plant functional traits. We also have Audrey Nash, who's working with Dr. Giuseppe Torre on seasonal and sub-seasonal variability in the Hawaiian Islands. Yen Wei is working with Han Seng, sorry, and Chris Schuler on soil moisture and soil moisture characterization. We have Yang Chiang, who's working with Dr. Peter Washington on machine learning algorithm for detecting pediatric developmental delays. Yang Chiang, I think you're here. Yep, you raise your hand. Sophia is working with Dr. Lisa McManus from the Department of Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology on coral reef ecology and modeling. Sophia, going ahead. And we have Fahim, who's working with the Hawaii State Energy Office on a research project of their topic. So you can see the breadth of the research that they're working with. A lot of it is interdisciplinary. This year we did some updates. The fellows work in pairs, and the pairs are intentionally developed so that they work in from different backgrounds, and it's to enhance cross-disciplinary collaboration. They co-develop the workshop content and present this. It's a free series that's open to the public. If you're interested, please navigate to our website at the end of the presentation to find out upcoming workshops in the spring semester. Some of the updates for this year are increased professional development opportunities to the Techfolios workshop that Dr. Philip Johnson presented. We've also introduced the MyID platform to help students curate a mentor program towards research progress. One of the highlights of this program is that the students develop data science skills while continuing to make progress on their thesis research. So it doesn't take away, it adds value to the students. We have 4 new workshops to this series that are coming up in the spring, including one on software engineering and code quality, so stay tuned for that. Moving on, we have the undergraduate program, also known as the core program. A lot of the students here work with faculty from the UH system and the Change Hawaii project across campuses, so both UH Manoa and Hilo campuses. Pictured here is actually Joel Nickman. His abstract got accepted. And he's been working with Dr. Peter Sadowski since the beginning of the program. It's a year-long mentored research program, and it's coupled with student cohort building activities, discussions, lab projects, lab tours, and most recently, the students participated in the campus-wide research symposium that was held in August. And you can read about very briefly about the research focus that they're working on. The highlight of this program is that it has flexible participation levels, so students can choose to commit 10, 15, or 20 hours a week towards a research project while balancing their student classes as well. And I think this one is coming.
Yeah, Kamu will do the next one.
Okay.
So in the original proposal, we had all these predicted areas that we were going to investigate. But we also left ourselves room for changes that might occur because this grant is going to run for 5 years, right? So we can't always predict what's going to happen. So we had a budget which will allow us to say, oh, here's a new area that we should be investigating in, and we can pursue that. So to talk about it a bit more is Kamu, who's going to talk about the Indigenous Data Science Hubs.
Hey, hello everybody. Can you hear me? Just came from a nice day with some NSF folks out at local air in Hawaiʻi, so I'm a little bit sunburned. But thank you all. I think there's multiple aspects to this that as when I was brought in the beginning to kind of think this through. The Office of Indigenous Knowledge, which is now the Office of Indigenous Knowledge Innovation. It was the Office of Indigenous Innovation. Was trying to hold space for discourse on how do we include Indigenous voice, not as a performance, but more as like a centering. And I think one of the things we began to recognize really early on, especially working with Jason and Kari Noi, is a graduate student in his center, who's also managing the CreateX space at University of Hawaii West Oahu, is that there's such an important opportunity to back into this idea of climate and data from an Indigenous lens in a non-performative way. We began to look at the work that Kari was doing in the CreateX space as like an opportunity to come into the conversation saying our ancestors were data scientists, and that our communities of practice that are still doing restorative work, they too are data scientists, because I feel it's really important for us to reshape the conversation of culture versus science to be one that is more actually different types of sciences sitting alongside each other and learning, and what are the bridges. So that was the intention, and that became part of a year-long journey to like begin to map that out in partnership with the CreateX studio, to rebuild what is happening there in other community colleges and to serve as a bridge. So that was the key thing that we're working on. There's a second aspect to it, to work with Dr. Aligato, who is also a part of the preliminary conversations, to provide an overview of like how is data sovereignty enacted and protected in this space. And I think she was going to work with some of these projects alongside us. But I think the core part of what we ended up building and the general focus of our work is the development of data science hubs. So basically, the Data Science Hub is a space that we are building out. One is at Leeward Community College, and the second is currently going to projected. We're not 100% sure yet. We had been in preliminary conversations with Kopiolani, with Kauai Kalamai, other KCC, to begin to looking at exploring it there. And as you can see from the pictures, we have been able, I think one of the things that was a real important part of proofing this was, as we were looking at building on what is at CreateX in a community college, we concurrently leveraged the fact that we had some funding through a different channel, like that was working on biocultural restoration in Pu'uloa, which is Pearl Harbor, where we used NOAA funding to run a bunch of graduate students. Oh, actually not. To hire some graduate students to teach a class and have the project focused on undergraduate students who at Leeward Community College, who were like in their first year of college, to spend 2 months, June and July, working in partnership with a community organization that was actually doing restoration work in Eva, and then in the process along the Eva corridor, the bike path there, that they're restoring fish ponds, and they were restoring some of the food systems there. And what we ended up doing was taking that project and having the students who are doing community-based research and community-based partner like INA work, to then take their findings and render it in a way that they could present at CreateX. Because we really wanted to do is take a concept and proof it out. And on the bottom, you can kind of see that picture with 3 of the students. There's a great article about the student on the far left, Bryson Tugare, in UH News. He was the commencement speaker for UH West Oahu. it was incredible success because I felt we needed to have a practice. So basically what the data science hub allowed us to do was to work with the community partner, which was important because part of what our office is trying to do is to get more INA-based organizations from moving from being sustained by grants actually to getting core operations like funding for their projects. And we're able to do that because we could then position this partner as an adjunct faculty. It's like you're housing UH students, they're going into your space, learning about biocultural restoration in real time, removing mangroves from a fish pond, planting along the Eva corridor. So you are acting like that. And that was really important for us because we have to, for our office's intention, understand our communities, practitioners as an ecosystem of innovation. The second thing it solved for was that we then could get students to take indigenous practices and translate it into data layers. And these are all very much in alignment with what the EPSCoR project is looking at, like how are we growing a next generation of data scientists? How are we creating scientific communication to communities that have been marginalized, not just telling them what the realities are, but allowing their practices to be encompassed in like creating these spaces. So that we were able to get the students who ran through this internship to then create data layers. The young man on the far left, Bryson Tugade, in his presentation, and the focus of his work was restoring this variant of sweet potato, this native Hawaiian variant of wala that used to be grown in the Everplains, repopulated. And he used these data hubs to show where are the areas in Eva that is amenable to growing this type of food, to restore this crop, but also what are the layers of his bigger goal was to work with the homeless community that lived along the Eva bike corridor, to have them access traditional food as a way to address persistent issues of houselessness and poverty while talking about climate adaptation and enacting student service. So he was able to use that printout of Oahu, which you see on the left, the right, to do different layering. Like these are the SNAP recipients in a community. This is the level. These are the areas of where Native Hawaiians are clustered and houselessness issues and so on and so forth. So that was really, really exciting as a proof point, because then we brought it back to the community college to tell teachers, they're like, hey, this is a thing. And we, in the initial idea, we'll be putting RFPs out for presentations, first for faculty to participate in these hubs. But we are calling this first one at Leeward a pilot. So we have allowed some license to kind of figure it out in partnership with the community college. We currently are on track to build, to begin purchasing. We have a site identified at Leeward Community College for the hub to be built. And we've done extensive outreach with the chancellor, the vice chancellor, a bunch of faculty and a bunch of students to begin to identify potential projects. And I'll just close. Some of the projects that we're working on is potentially with a faculty member who is also a crew member at Hokulea, who hopefully will be developing a designing class to build va'a or canoes to sail again, to use these hubs to teach indigenous ocean sciences and the sciences of navigation. We have another one working with mapping out where the call or stories of self and our kupuna, how they told stories of place with a Hawaiian studies professor to have students begin to map these stories out and to kind of understand the relationship with geospatial location of their ancestral stories, but also what are the deeper things these stories give you insight in terms of climatic events, because all the stories were kind of ways to talk about climate and ways to talk about how humans relate with climate. And then the final one is some larval fish visualization process with Professor Don Bibiani. So again, we are wrapping up our first year and having all of this comprehensively set up at Leeward, and we're beginning our exploration of our second year, put in conversations with Maui and with our Kauai Community College, with some partners on Kauai. Yeah, so thank you all. That was a lot. I actually do have to step off at this point. I have to pick my daughter up from school, but I can also be available via email if you have further questions. But I appreciate all of you. Mahalo.
Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Burns. I'll be talking about another public-private partnership project. This one in particular is a partnership between the Mega Lab and Aqualink. The Mega Lab is a multi-institutional, multidisciplinary research group. So the lead scientists are Drs. Hanani Kane, Dr. Cliff Capono, and myself. And in a nutshell, what we're really trying to do in the larger picture is redefine and change how people view science, and also show communities how science can improve our daily lives. And we're really proud of how everything has gone these first few years. You know, especially being based here in Hawaii, it's good to have diverse leadership. Helps to create a safe space for students, but also attract students that may have not otherwise seen themselves as succeeding in STEM. So we have a really large array and scope of projects, because Hanani's a geologist, Cliff's a chemist, and I'm a biologist. So other than sounding like a start of a bad joke, our research just ranges a really large breadth of disciplines. And the public-private partnership here is one we initiated with Aqualink. So Aqualink is a nonprofit group, and they're currently designing oceanographic monitoring systems that can be easily and affordably deployed by not just research groups, but anyone around the world. And because we're here on the Big Island, we have a really phenomenal testing ground over in Kona, where we can deploy these instruments for them in high current, high surf, high surge environments and see how they hold up. So we've been helping to develop the first few generations of the Aqualink monitoring buoy. And so this buoy is located on one of our coral reef study sites. And what's nice about it is it gives us temperature values, not just from the surface, but down at the reef level, as well as in the water column. So when satellite projections are telling us that there's alarming warming or risk of coral bleaching, which is when corals lose their photosynthetic algae and turn white and become very immunocompromised, we can have a direct real-time analysis of how do the temperatures compare from surface water down to the benthic environment where corals are located. Now, having the temperature data alone is only so useful, so we teamed up with them to install one of the live streaming cameras. And these were similar systems that were used in the film Chasing Coral. That was when I first met the engineers. And so we deployed, we're now on our third version of the camera. And so essentially we have matched video that's hosted on YouTube that streams real time 24 hours a day to the temperature data, which gives us a first time unique view into how not just corals, but other reef organisms such as fish respond to these changing temperatures that we're seeing, especially with climate change. They've been increasing the last few years, and we've here in Hawaii had our first severe bleaching events back in 2015, 2016. To make the most out of this project, we've involved a bunch of different students, both at the graduate and primarily undergraduate level. And so they've been leveraging this system to conduct multiple projects. For example, I'm just going to highlight some of the more interesting and successful ones. One of our students from Oahu, Trevor Nishida, he's built some really impressive machine learning algorithms to track fish, but not just whether or not fish are there, actually look at fish behaviors. So yellow tang, which is one of the more targeted fish species for aquarium trade, he was able to use these tools to identify them and also mark where they're feeding. So we can look at their grazing habits as herbivores on the reefs and see how that responds to seasonal changes that we're documenting from our temperature data with the buoys. Another student, Makoa Pasco from Kaneohe, he grew up in a fishing family that really focuses on octopus. And so one of the first things that happened when we put the camera in that engaged a lot of people online, we've got over 10,000 subscribers and millions of views, was we get a lot of octopus activity. So not having anyone in the water disturbing the habitat, the view that we get of animal behavior is very unique. So we've caught octopus throughout the days. We caught octopus mating, which is very rare to observe. And so what's great is that we've got this dedicated online community. They call themselves cammers, and they not just chat and mark timestamps of when these organisms are observed, but they log them for us online. So it's turned into a really productive and successful citizen science platform. So Makoa goes through and he collates all these observations, and he just presented today. This is part of his senior thesis here at Hilo. And he's seen really interesting seasonal patterns in octopus observations, but not just that, he's been marking their behavior So we've been able to see seasonality in mating, as well as their hunting activities, which surprisingly interact with several other fish species. So it's improving what we already know in the literature about other species that they'll interact with, but it's giving us a much better and more accurate perception of how this occurs throughout the year. We've also got a bunch of students on the Change Hawaii project looking at how the corals and other organisms have been responding to the temperature data. We're adding in some current sensors as well now. So we're just increasing the number of variables and parameters we're able to quantify throughout the year. And the last project I want to talk about, you can see one of the figures here, was led by our graduate student, Zach Taylor, but involved about a half dozen undergraduates. And they went out and they wanted to see, is this a viable method and is it comparable to traditional scuba surveys? So they did the standard cylinder survey counts that NOAA and other agencies use, where essentially you're on the reef, you have this 15-meter diameter area, and you mark all the fish that are present, and then you enumerate abundances as well as size. And it's been a long-standing question in the science community is, can this be done on snorkel and free dive as well? And if it's viable, the reason why that's so important is you've got a lot of community groups in Hawaii that want to study their ecosystems, and they're often told, well, you aren't formally trained scientists and this has to be done on scuba. So he compared data collected from these standardized scuba surveys, and then he also conducted surveys using the actual camera. So because it pans, it's a PTZ, so it's a pan tilt zoom camera, we can move it around and look in all directions. So we set it on a timer to spin around the same way a diver was. And this enabled Zach and the students to compare data from scuba to the camera. And then they also did surveys on snorkel where they stayed at the surface, as well as free diving where they would come down and then come back up and record their observations. And so when you look at everything from fish abundance, fish diversity, fish size, fish biomass, you can see the results from all these surveys. And it was incredibly surprising to us how much they all overlapped outside of snorkel, which wasn't too surprising because your presence at the surface allows a lot of fish, particularly a few damselfish species that rise up in the water column when you're down below. You're able to spot those better, but it's harder to count and enumerate a lot of the fish that hang out on the bottom. And so that's why you see in green, snorkel is somewhat deviated, but not entirely from these other surveys. So this work is being written up now. He just defended his master's thesis, and we're trying to put out a publication on this that's involving the students. But it's got really compelling results to show that there is a lot of utility for free dive and snorkel surveys, and we're hoping that this opens up the doors for more communities to get involved. Just as an example, there's groups here in Hawaii that have been in the process of developing, subsistence-based SBSA, like fishery designations, so they can have more independent management and work with the state together. And when you consider the limited resources of the state, this is really crucial because we can't do it all. I mean, there's just not enough funds to support DLNR officers to be around the island and to have DAR scientists monitoring everywhere. And I think this can really build our capacity as a state to do a better job monitoring our coastal ecosystems. So that's a little bit of an overview. If you want to learn more, you can check out our website at themegalab.org, but you can also go to the aqualink.org website to learn more about those ocean observatory systems. There's more groups throughout the Hawaiian islands that have been adopting these. I think they've got a lot of utility because they do produce, as I said, high accuracy temperature data, but at a very, very low cost. So they're easy to install, and I think can help us a lot with getting, similar to how a lot of groups here are getting better climate data from terrestrial ecosystems. We can try match that better in these underwater habitats that are typically really hard to study. So yeah, thanks everyone. I appreciate your time. Hope everybody has a great weekend and enjoys the rest of their Friday.
Thank you, John. And I think the last segment is delivered by Connor.
We have the Mega Lab panel on all. Yeah, my name is Connor Flynn. I am a graduate of the Chaminade Data Science program. I went to UC Santa Barbara for a master's degree in environmental data science. And I'm the education program manager for our NSF Alliance and for CUH EPSCoR. I'm also a sustainability analyst in our United Nations Center on campus. And I'm here to represent Dr. Helen Turner. She's an EPSCoR PI. She's the PI on the NSF Includes Alliance and STEM, as well as the research director for our UN Sustainability Center. and a Woman in Data Science ambassador, as well as Dr. Alex Stokes, who's a PI on JADE, STEM, and AIM Ahead, as well as a sex and gender minority advocate, and Kamuela, who we heard from just now, and Dr. Rylan Chong, the Chaminade Data Science Program Director. And we have two main messages, just to echo off of what Phil said, just about identifying barriers and broadening participation. So we want to highlight how programming for diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice is embedded across Change Hawaii initiatives. And also just show kind of our gratitude and our highlights as Chaminade University and seeing how EPSCoR has built capacity at Chaminade University for data science. So first, we just want to showcase some broadening participation efforts and just align them to each EPSCoR element. So we'll start with the administration core. So the first is to promote safe and inclusive team environments. This is being done by designing and implementing a team science agreement. So this is in its final stages, and it's just identifying key characteristics that will make up a space that we can all succeed in this EPSCoR grant. The second EPSCoR element we'll look at is education workforce. So promoting recruitment and inclusion of women and historically underrepresented participants in data science and computer science. This is happening with recruitment partnerships with inclusion programs into undergraduate research experiences and the Data Fellows Program, the Data Fellows Community of Practice, the Data Ethics Student-Led Journal Club, the SPICE Pacific Data Science Summer Immersion Program, and then broadening participation partnerships, which include Women in Data Science. Our NSF Includes Alliance Network, and some service opportunities. On the faculty development side, we look to promote inclusive pedagogy and community responsive research. So this is happening with Dr. Alex Stokes with the JADE STEM Educational Research Program, through our LAHA Data Science Justice Seminar Series, and through Kulana no I Training Partnership. And lastly, just to highlight some emerging areas, we heard from Kamuela and some seed funding on Indigenous data science hubs. That's really exciting. This slide is meant to demonstrate just some of our recruitment partnerships and how we think about the most strategic and intentional ways of funneling students into our undergraduate research experiences, internships, majors, and graduate school. And that's just through working with partners such as PIPES at Hilo, the Chaminade Data Science Program, STEM with Dr. Alex Stokes at the Chaminade equivalent, which is STEM Pearl, AIM Ahead Heart, and SPICE Summer Program from Chaminade. So just, thinking critically about how students can flow from one experience to the next. And then we'd like to highlight just some broader partnerships and services. So again, Women in Data Science, our NSF network. Dr. Turner has been in national conversations about workplace equity in STEM, especially for persons with disabilities. And Dr. Alex Stokes has been a long-term advocate of the LGBTQ+ Center. Just to touch on some of Dr. Alex Stokes' work as well. So through that JADE program, we have 122 survey results just on looking at data science and that approach to teaching data science in a more equitable and justice-oriented way. And all of the results of that survey are going into a paper that's currently in preparation. And then we wanted to highlight Dr. Hinson and Allegado on this culture and community responsive research training that they've been providing. This slide is just meant to highlight some of our LAHA Data Science Justice Seminar Series. So there's been 8 sessions so far with 62 participants and growing. It serves Hawaii, the continental US, and the US API. And the students attending represent our alliance, EPSCoR, LSAMP, and community representatives. Some of the topics have been about language and data science equity in the Pacific, about decolonizing quantitative research methods, and utilizing machine learning just for equity-driven purposes in small and developing states. Then as far as the student professional development side, we have our Data Ethics Journal Club. Again, 8 sessions with about 62 participants. It's student conceived and student led. Each semester has a theme. So this theme was health equity this semester. Again, it serves Hawaii, the continental US, and the US API. And this is really neat because it leads to a United Nations certification. So for any of the students that complete all 3 Journal Club workshops, they'll get a UN certification from our center on campus saying that they completed so. And this is led by Beverly Rice. She's a PhD student with Dr. Helen Turner, and Matao Hawaiʻi. She's a Chaminade graduate currently at Yale, earning her PhD in epidemiology and working also in the Indigenous Innovation Center. And lastly, just highlighting again how data science capacity building is going at Chaminade. So our program has grown from 9 majors to 32 majors, 30 minors, and 9 certificate students. 90 students at Chaminade are in Gen Ed data science classes. Our program is comprised of 80% women, 69% Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, and 25% veterans. We launched a new computer science major. It's currently in year 1 and going very well. And we acquired some new space. So we got 1,100 square feet, which is not easy to do at Chaminade. We're already a pretty small space. And we're really excited about collaborating with some of these SAGE tools and data visualization and physicalization. For graduation outcomes, we have 14 graduates to date, 100% graduation rate, 100% placement in either graduate school. 50% of those 14 have gone to graduate school and the other 50% into industry. Their mean salary after placement is around $96,000. Some curriculum development has been happening at Chaminade. So we have new online data science for Oceania. And then we have some UN short courses. So again, not looking at a whole semester just to learn something. These will be 4 to 6 week courses that will be sponsored by the UN that you earn a certificate at the end. And those are in GIS, sustainability, analytics in R, and then counter-malign information studies. And then lastly, the Summer Spice Immersion program that I mentioned is really kind of the staple at Chaminade for the data science community. So this is 30 participants. It's only 1 month over the summer with about a $6,000 stipend. There were 70% women and 69% Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. 6 of those students were funded by EPSCoR, and they focus on climate analytics. They were from Guam Community College, Chaminade, and the Northern Marianas College. And out of the 5 years that we've had Spice Summer go on, this is the first that we were lucky enough to have presentations in both Carolinian and Aloha Hawaii. These are some products. So we have some GitHub links and just some products of that Summer Spice program. And that's everything that we have for Chaminade. Thank you.
Very, very impressive project. I'm going to switch to Chaminade now. So that brings us to the conclusion of our updates. I'm glad you're all still here. I know this is like a 2-hour Chris Nolan movie. I thought it was going to be an hour long, but I apologize for that. If you are interested in more information, these are our primary websites. We'll leave this up, so if you want to, click on them on your phones, record them, by all means do so. Do we have any last questions or from the general public or online for any of the folks in the project before we end? If not, again, thank you all for joining us. And please take some time to take a look at the demos back there for the projectable that Nurit and Trace has developed. Also, I put out John Burns's augmented reality coral reef. It's really cool on the side. And I think somebody over there will show you how to run those and help yourself to refreshments.